This is Moments of Truth with Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker. Today, I am joined by Sara Masson, Director of Customer Success at Loopio. Sara, welcome. Tell us a bit about your company and your role.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I am the Director of Customer Success at Loopio, and Loopio is a company that helps with response to RFPs, RFIs, DDQs, and I've got to say, I absolutely loved working at Loopio and with our customers because RFPs are just such a pain that I think we have the best customers in the world. They are so excited to find a solution, and so it is such an absolute pleasure to work with each and every one of them. In my role, I started at Loopio about 4 years ago, and I got to work directly with a lot of our customers. And what I love is that I continue to hear stories from our CSMs about the customers and how they're using our solution, but also just what they're doing in the industry. And one of the most satisfying things is really getting to share those stories back to our customer community and watching them all grow and evolve together. It's a lot of fun. And that's why I love initiatives like Success Hacker that really help grow people in their roles.
Thank you. I appreciate the plug. So you're doing a lot of communications with your customers, and that's the topic of conversation today. So in today's customer success world, the vast majority of our communications are being done in some sort of virtual fashion. I know there's still some folks out there that are getting actual FaceTime with customers, but the vast majority of customer success is done in some sort of virtual fashion, whether it's over the phone or via video call or via email. So let's talk about some best practices on how you can be as effective as possible and give off that right impression using those different channels of communication.
Absolutely. And communication is something I am so passionate about, because when I talk to customer success leaders, very often when they're starting out building a team or they're joining a new tech company and they are going to be the first CSM, they will read a bunch of things online about customer health scores or customer journeys or building email templates. And these are all really critical components of the customer lifecycle. But what I think often gets forgotten is that your communication method is your delivery for all of this. And people form first impressions in seconds. If those communications are not sharp, it doesn't matter how perfect that journey you've crafted is. It does not matter how well calibrated a health score is if the communications aren't being delivered effectively, because communications are our primary method of trying to collaborate with our customers, understand how they feel, gain a good pulse for their sentiment, and actually drive behavior. If you're not communicating effectively, you're not going to be able to drive any of those behavioral changes with your core contact or with their teams. Whether it's an executive sponsor or an end user, your communications is ultimately what's going to power your success, which means your customer success. So it's something I am super passionate about, and it's a big part of how I work with the team at Loopio and how we continue to train all of them. So often when I'm talking to customer success professionals, they will say they're really passionate about data, or they're great with executives, and that is like how they really make their mark. Is they are so confident when speaking to executives. They deliver the best QBRs. Sometimes I'll hear people who are really into the data and feel they've built strong health scores, or people who feel like they're relationship people. I'm sure this is common as well. You hear people who say, hey, my customer follows me on Instagram, or we text on the weekend, or we went out for drinks, and this is my claim to fame. I'm a relationship person. What I wish I heard more was, I write the best emails. They are so compelling. I never get ghosted. I get a response every single time I send an email because I'm really thoughtful. And I know that my emails are like my call-in cards. They're going to be forwarded around. If my contact leaves and gets a new role at another company, those emails are going to be seen by somebody else, and they are going to be that person's first impression, possibly of my company, but certainly of me and how we're going to work together. And they are often my secret path to get in front of executives who I don't have a direct relationship with. They are going to be forwarded. And if I do a really, really good job writing those emails, they're actually going to be often forwarded because my contact now has an easy way to communicate with their executives. So I can do some of the work for my contact and actually leverage really, really thoughtful email writing to get in front of people who I otherwise wouldn't have access to. So I know email is typically thought of as such a boring topic. Who wants to talk about emails? It is not often a hot topic, but I think that it's a really clear pillar in a customer success manager role and their ability to be successful.
Well,
Similarly,
I think it's important that we recognize that many customer success challenges are about miscommunication and misset expectations, right? Something that didn't get communicated correctly, or expectations weren't set correctly, and that happens on both sides of the fence. So I 100% agree with you. And what I find is, and you pointed this out before, I find that people don't seem to focus on getting the communication right. It's like the last thing in the list. We got the journey, we got the playbooks, we got the copy and all this stuff for marketing and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, hey, have you fixed the delivery method of all that information?
absolutely. That's exactly it. If your emails are really, really compelling and clear, often that is what powers having a really strong journey. And that is what's going to make your customer health score so much more impactful, because when you find a gap, you're going to be able to address it much more quickly because you've really flexed the muscle of being an effective communicator and driving behavior through how you're communicating with your customers. So being able to communicate effectively through email is so, so important. And when you're looking at those communications, I think that just stepping back and asking yourself, honestly, if you would respond to those emails.
Yeah.
I did this as an exercise with my team. We did a pretty robust training session on writing better emails. And I'm sure most customer success leaders have come up against this challenge where they have a CSM come to them and say, my customer is non-responsive. And I am so frustrated because they won't get back to me and I don't know what to do. I've tried emailing them 7 times. I tried leaving them a voicemail. I sent them a LinkedIn message, and I'm frustrated. And my challenge to those teams is really that maybe the thing that's frustrating isn't that your customer is not responding. It's that no one has ever coached you in how to be so compelling that your customer can't help but respond to you.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
So how do you make the communication compelling?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be nailing it. I actually built out a really fast scorecard for the team that allowed them to evaluate their emails. And it was some basic questions. Is this even going to the right person? Is it targeted to that person's role? So if it's going to a team leader, is it written differently in a way that's going to be compelling to that leader versus an individual contributor who might be really, really busy, have a lot on the go? How do we target it to them? And is it data-driven? I find people tend to go in one of 2 directions. They either don't do their homework because they just, who wants to read data? I'm just going to send a good email. Or they want to show their work. When we were young, we had to show all our math work as we did those long form equations. Sometimes when people do their research, they want to show their homework. So they will list 10 data points. I spoke to this person. You have this volume of this activity, this many logins, this much of this activity in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And it is such a long email and it is overwhelming. And for the reader on the other end, they end up seeing that and they're like, I don't know what to do with this. You just seem really all over the place. I don't know what you're asking me to do. It's a lot. And so the big challenge is to do your homework, but not show your work.
Right.
No one cares about 20 data points, but trends and the story behind them are really, really compelling.
Right. Tell me, what's the punchline, right? That's what's compelling, right? Okay.
Absolutely. What's the punchline? So do your homework. It should be obvious to me in reading one or two sentences that you've done a lot of homework. I don't need to see your work. I need to see what the story is, and I need to know what the call to action is.
Right.
And one of the ways I like to measure that is just through reading your email and nothing else. You're asking me to hop on a call, you're asking me for something. But through the simple act of reading this email, am I actually better off than I was before I read it? And if the answer to that is no, I feel like there's still more work to be done.
Yeah, got it. So relevant for the role, what's the punchline, and then what's the ask? What's the call to action? Simple, straightforward, to the point, keep it simple.
Absolutely. Keep it simple. Cut it in half and then cut it in half again. No one wants to read a novel. Do your homework, but don't show your work.
Okay. What about adjusting? Something that I've often coached folks on is adjusting your writing to who your audience is, right? So I typically recommend that you're writing to somewhere between a 6th to an 8th grade level. And I actually I recommend things like Hemingway. I don't know if you've seen the Hemingway app, which is a great way to, or Grammarly, I believe, does it as well. Give you a read of, hey, this is the reading level you're at, and that, of course, and that's for most people, unless you're dealing with like C-suite or PhDs and stuff like that. Do you agree with that? Is that something that you also kind of coach your folks on?
Absolutely. I think that speaking to the right audience is so important, and making sure that you're communicating in a way that's going to be effective for that audience. But keeping in mind that, especially if it's an email, that does not only go to one person. Anytime that you are sending an email, I like to say, imagine that I'm going to be CC'd on this, and imagine that this is going to go all the way up to the CRO within your customer's business. So anytime you're sending an email, just pretend that their boss is going to see it, their boss's boss is going to see it. This is going all the way up, because you want to make sure that you are keeping that professionalism up, and also that it could be shared, because in the world we live in today, any email I send could be screenshotted and shared on LinkedIn. And the ability to forward an email, it's high. And so often someone will write an email to someone and then more people will be looped into the chain. So I think targeting it, making it compelling is important, but keeping in mind that especially today in our day and age, anything can and will be shared.
Yeah, you can't even tweet something these days and delete it in time for somebody to screenshot it and spread it all over the web, right? You got to be really careful. It becomes a matter of public record as soon as you write that, as soon as you hit send, as soon as you hit post, as soon as you hit tweet,
The second it happens, and sometimes CSMs on that relationship front will form really, really strong relationships, and they'll get a little bit more casual, and that's okay. I have absolutely sent a GIF in an email before, and some of the most successful CSMs on my team leverage things like that to keep the relationship warm. As long as it's professional, there's no problem with a certain level of casualness and showing you have that relationship, but knowing that there is always that line and that the email could very, very easily be shared, I think it's important to keep in the back of your mind.
100% agree with you. One of the things I also used to talk to my folks about was, especially when you're in a heated situation, right? If you're writing an email that in a heated situation is, you write it but don't send it, or sleep on it overnight, right? And then look at it the next day when you have a clear head.
Oh yeah, hot situations are hard. And one of my favorite phrases that I actually am stealing from one of our customers is that urgency is often an emotion, not a reality. So often we get that hot email and we just want to reply. We're like, I'm ready to go, tap me in.
Right.
And so the first thing we want to do is like, okay, they're upset. I have 3 minutes to get back to them. That is very often the wrong move.
Exactly.
Depending on your business, obviously, and the customer and the context, taking a second to gather yourself, taking enough time to speak to the correct stakeholders internally and align and come back with a really strong response is often so much more valuable. If you come from the kind of industry, or if you have a kind of relationship with a customer where a response right away is required, and sometimes we have those situations, I'm a big believer in just sending the acknowledgement of email. So, hey, got it, totally understand, really appreciate you sharing this with me and the level of candor that you've shared. I need to something internally to get you the best response back. You'll hear back from me by this time.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with an email like that.
Yeah, very few mission critical situations out there where you need to just respond right away. So 100% agree with you. Just take a step back. You don't even necessarily, I mean, I get the responding, if there's something, right away and saying, hey, I got to collect all the information, let me get back to you. But sometimes you don't even need to do that, right? It's just take a step back, walk away, come back half an hour later, sleep on it, what have you. Just don't have that immediate reaction, and at the same time, I think it's important that you're practicing empathy and understanding, especially in a hot situation, that the person on the other end is coming from a position of stress themselves, and you may not be the only thing that's on their kind of stress pile, right? You're just one piece of the pie.
Oh, completely. I am a huge believer in empathy in all customer communication. It is something I'm really, really passionate about. And when it comes to those emails especially, I find that if you feel uncomfortable, the natural response is almost to start to distance yourself piece by piece and word by word. And that is where so often we end up communicating like robots. I genuinely think there is no phrase in the English language worse than "we sincerely apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused."
Exactly.
I'm like, who is we?
Yes.
Why sincerely? Were you not being sincere before?
Yeah.
Inconvenience. I told you I'm pissed, and now you're telling me it's an inconvenience.
Yeah.
And may have caused, like, no, it did cause it. I am upset, and you're pretending I'm not.
Yeah.
When you're writing an email that's difficult, I recommend just reading it out loud. And if you feel squishy, uncomfortable saying it, you should feel uncomfortable sending it.
Yeah, those robotic responses are not good. You need to there's a human on the other end of this, and you need to treat them with that kind of respect. And you have to empathize. You want to empathize with them. And I also think people tend to mistake empathy with sympathy, right? Empathy is just putting yourself in their shoes. Sympathy is where you add the emotional component into that. But you can still be empathetic without necessarily having to be sympathetic. And there's still a lot of people, when I talk to folks, what does empathy mean? And they basically give me the definition of sympathy. No. It's not about that. It's just about understanding where their perspective is coming from, and being a human, right? And understanding that those robotic responses are inhuman.
I agree. And we spend a lot of time on email, but video calls on the theme of being human are another area where showing your humanity is so important. And the first step for me is really showing your face. So when I'm looking at how to coach the team in terms of communications, that is the easiest thing anyone on the team can do, is just turn on your camera. It makes such a difference to be able to see the actual person on the other end.
Yeah, for sure. And show up expecting to any video call that you're going to have your camera on.
Absolutely. Even the hard ones. I know a lot of people want to have their camera off if they're going to be talking about pricing, or if they're going to be talking about a renewal, or if the customer's upset because you don't want to be caught physically off guard. But being a human and having your customer able to see you interact is so important. And 9 times out of 10, if you turn your camera on, they're going to turn their camera on. And it is so much more important to be able to build those relationships, seeing each other face to face.
Well, and also when they turn their camera on, you can see those nonverbal cues that we would normally see if we were sitting across the table from them. So it's almost as good as being in person. Right? You can see the sigh, you can see them sighing, you can see them slumping, you can see them crossing their arms, you can see the smile or the frown or and you can tell if somebody's already starting to think about that next thing that they're going to say. So are they really listening to you? These are all really important parts of effectively communicating.
I agree. And seeing them looking like they're ready to go is another thing that I think is so valuable to pay attention to. We use a call recording software similar to a lot of other companies. So Gong, Chorus, very common softwares. And one thing that we measure really closely on our team is patience. So are you interrupting your customer? Because if they want to speak, you should be giving them room without cutting them off, and giving them room to share more information so that you can make better recommendations for them, and just to help with that relationship. If you're cutting them off, there is probably nothing worse you could do for that relationship than continually cut somebody off when they have something they want to share and when they're excited enough to be sharing with you. So patience is really big for me when we're looking at that call, and seeing your customer is a great way to make sure that you're not cutting them off, because you can see them just getting ready.
Yeah, and you can tell when somebody's really engaged. I've even been on calls where people have leaned in. When you're having a conversation, they're leaning in. Okay, this person's really, really listening, right? And it's the same thing with you. If you are actively listening to your customer, leaning in, those types of nonverbal cues that you're giving off to your customer that signify, hey, this person is really listening to me. In addition to the and the and those types of verbal cues, as well as repeating back to them what they've said and in your own words, all that active listening, all those active listening skills really helps create that conversation that you want, and gives people that opportunity to open up to you. And what you'll find, because our job is what's so important in customer success at all different phases of the customer journey, is really understanding what's going on with the customer. How do you define success? What are these problems? What are the most important milestones that you want to achieve? Why do you want to get there? What's under the covers? How do these things play a part in what you're bonused on, what your objectives are, right? All of those things help you as a customer success manager, do a better job and serve your customers better.
Absolutely. And you mentioned making it clear that you're paying attention and showing that you're paying attention. It is so rare today. I am sure everyone can remember going out with someone to dinner and having that person checking their phone and getting new messages, and something just came up on Twitter or Reddit, or you're in a meeting and just slacking somebody or sending emails at the same time, or you're home talking to a family member or a roommate or a partner and they're watching Netflix and they're scrolling through Instagram while they're talking to you. The gift of paying complete attention to somebody is really appreciated and valued today, perhaps more than ever in the past. And if you can just do that, if you can genuinely show your customer that they have your full and undivided attention and that you really care, not just about their product metrics, but about their goals, what they're bonused on, how things are going with them, and how you can genuinely help, you are going to be so much more successful and better off, and so are they.
So what you're saying is really good communication leads to success in customer success.
I really do believe that good communication is a core driver for success for you and your customers. That's really what customer success is. It's both of you succeeding together.
Excellent. Great. Very insightful. I appreciate you
spending
time with me today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.